Honestly, we ran out of jokes last time about the weather that we experienced throughout this season of the Russian Drift Series. And after the latest Stage 6 of RDS GP, there's only one question left to ask. What's next? A volcanic eruption, earthquake, hurricane, or a meteor shower perhaps? We'll find out soon enough because the final race of the season is just around the corner. Speaking of the season finale, the good news is that the battle for the championship is still very much on and quite heated. As for what happened at Igora Drive near St. Petersburg, we'll get into that right now. On the one hand, names were added to the roster for this event, with Predator Drift Team returning to the action. But on the other hand, some drivers dropped out. Alexei Vakhtin, Yevgeny Spirin, Nikita Shikov, and Vladislav Yerofeyev didn't even attend the event, and on Friday they were joined by Sergei Kuznetsov, whose car had suffered a failure. That leaves us with 34 drivers contending for 32 spots on the grid for the actual competition. Interestingly, the judging assignment spiced up the competition. At a quick glance, there weren't too many changes. It had fewer clips, in some spots the course was widened, in others narrowed. However, the most important changes were for the style criterion, which we'll remind you was now all about commitment, or the dynamics of a run. For this event, the track was divided into 5 sectors for style, and every one of the cars aside from drift dynamics sensors were also fitted with track telemetry sensors, which timed how long it took and, by extension, the average speed of the cars to move through said sectors. And if a car took longer to get through any given sector than instructed by the judges, Vladimir Safonov would start removing points. The thing is that many people say that they're all for higher speeds, under the guise of this is racing after all. But in reality, when it's time for qualifying, drivers become gentle with their throttle inputs, refusing to properly work the gas pedal because they're looking to rack up as many points as they can, say, for line. So in other words, they're sacrificing speed for precision, which is not ideal. But let's see what comes out of this. All of practice was conducted on dry pavement, but on Saturday morning a dense fog rolled in, which was sometimes accompanied by very heavy rain. To give you an idea of how bad it was, on day 1 the race had to be stopped 3 times until there was at least some visibility. As if the track being flooded wasn't enough. Group 1, consisting of Vladislav Popov, Ilya Fyodorov, Artyom Shabanov, Dmitry Yermokin, and Danila Vorobyev, got lucky to an extent. The thing here is that they didn't lift the speed restrictions because of the rain, but during the first few times when drivers from this group were going out, they were collecting data in order to make adjustments to them, which was mentioned during the briefing. But initially the cars were crawling on wet pavement. Surprises included 2 zeros for Shabanov and Fyodorov, who spun out. Otherwise, things were more or less straightforward. Things went up a notch when Vorobyev, who was the last to do his first run, rocketed down the racetrack, earning an impressive score of 95. Then Popov did a great job with his second run, earning a solid score of 89.5. Then Shabanov went out, who was being super cautious with his second attempt, earning just 70.5 points because of his conservative pace. His score for line was decent more or less, 26, as was for his angle, 28.5. But for style, Artyom received a mere 16 points, with him being severely penalized through almost every sector. And considering his other run got him a 0, it was not a given that he would even qualify. But after that is where the fun began. Drivers from Group 2, including Ivan Palman, Maxim Grossman, Pyotr Borodin, Denis Sorokoput, Anton Dmitrienko, and Dmitry Sherbina, were expectedly crawling down the track, with scores plummeting precipitously. Never mind 90, no driver even cracked the 80-point threshold. Scores varied from 56.5 for Grossman to 77 for Sorokoput. That was for first runs. But from there it would seem as if a switch flipped in their heads with them going, oh, you're supposed to actually press the gas? And wring the cars out for them to go faster in these conditions. And that's when things became interesting. Drivers were carrying way more speed now. Each and every driver improved their score for their second attempt. Drivers realized they couldn't slack off, and began to take risks and press the gas. The best improvement in this entire group was shown by Grossman, who was able to increase his score by a good 30+ points to 87, not a single 0. From there, throughout the session, drivers were safe running their first attempts, losing points for their speed, risking it on their second runs, and improving their scores. It was the inverse sometimes, but that's how it mostly went. Group 3 comprised of Arkady Tsargratsev, Artur Zelyony, Georgy Chivchian, Leonid Schneider, and Anton Kozlov. The negatives included Zelyony scoring 64 and 59.5, and all due to a lack of experience. The positives, Tsaragratsev, who was flying while barely making any mistakes, and temporarily becoming best in qualifying after scoring 97 points. Others who scored 90 plus include Chivchian 94.5 and Kizin 90.5, for their second attempts, of course. The only 0 for Schneider, though thankfully he scored 85 on his first try. Group 4, Ilya Popov, Danila Skorobogatov, Artyom Leitis, Grigory Burlutsky, Grigory Gusyev, Roman Tividar. The worst positive score for Burlutsky's first attempt, 63, though he did score 82 for his second. The only 0 for straightening out was received by Gusyev. He was able to post a 79 for his second try. 90 plus points for Popov, 92. And Skorobogatov, 94, for their respective second attempts. Group 5, Alexander Abramov, Ilya Polishuk, Evgeny Losiev, Sergei Sak, Denis Miguel, Alexei Kozlov. And the results were disappointing. The only one who did well more or less was Losiev, 92 and 85.5. Otherwise, scores were hovering around the 70-point mark. The worst results for the group were surprisingly posted by Miguel, 63 and 65.5. For the final Group 6, scores increased somewhat, though nobody was able to crack the 90-point threshold, even though this was a formidable bunch: Anton Kliemko, Timothy Dobrovolsky, Damir Idiatulin, Andrei Stepov, and Kirill Mickiewicz. The worst positive score was for Kliemko's first run, 60 points, though Anton was able to improve his score by 22.5 points, earning 82.5. The only 0 was for Mickiewicz's second run, though he did score 73 for his first. Best of the group, unsurprisingly, was Idiatulin, 86 and 89. Drivers who failed to qualify include Artur Zelyony and, surprise, Denis Miguel. Best in qualifying, Arkady Tsaragratsev. My car was incredibly fast, it's in a great state of tune. Starting on Thursday and then on Friday, we realized that we can maintain a fantastic pace. The judges also took notice because during the briefing, they were like, Tsaragratsev is the fastest, drive like Tsaragratsev. I was like, wait, I wasn't trying to be the fastest, that just sort of happened on its own. I was able to carry that same sort of pace on wet pavement, obviously adjusting it for the rain, but I was able to show the best results in qualifying. I made the least amount of mistakes, in terms of style, which is now equated to speed. Overall, that's a good thing because now you're encouraged to go fast. Before that wasn't the case. Drivers would go out for qualifying, hit all of the clips, and call it a day. And those who were actually trying to go fast, which makes it more difficult, they weren't always appreciated for it. But now the situation has taken a turn for the better. There was pretty much no intermission between qualifying and the top 32. The competition had to be started earlier because of the fog. And for the entire left side of the grid, there was no confusion whatsoever. Just like in Krasnoyarsk, effectively. Avoid spinning out or going off course, good job, you're in the top 16. Round 1 of the heat between Sergei Sak and Arkady Tsaragratsev. The former, while following, spins out in epic fashion while initiating, which sealed the fate of this battle. Arkady carefully made it to the finish line, and for round 2 he was just as smooth and measured behind a slightly inconsistent leader. Tsaragratsev wins. Denis Sorokaput and Roman Tividar both were doing very well during round 1, up until touch and go 6, where Roman blocked the leader's transition and even pushed him into the dirt. Tividar is obviously at fault. Round 2, neither driver got a 0. Tividar did a decent job leading, with Sorokaput sticking pretty close, even though he was correcting dramatically, but he still secured a spot in the top 16. Vladislav Popov in his battle with Alexei Kozlov scored 0 points in the lead, with all 4 of his wheels going off course during the initiation. And while following, he gave his opponent a massive strike, again while initiating. Alexei made it all the way, Vlad straightened out, it's obvious who won. Damir Idiatulin and Ilya Polishuk, and another straightforward battle. Polishuk washed out while following, then he straightened out, without being obviously provoked by the leader. Idiotulin did apply a bit of handbrake, but again, even given the strict qualification speed restrictions in this sector, he lost a mere 2 points for style. This definitely shouldn't have thrown the chaser off like that. Damir calmly made it to the line, and was just as measured while he was following his opponent, who by the way was pretty slow. Damir wins. The following battle ended at around the middle of the first round, where Danila Skarbogatov was leading and doing a pretty good job with it, with Anton Dmitrienko following. What happened was that the prop shaft on Dmitrienko's Silvia snapped, damaging the fuel tank in the process. He retires, Skarbogatov is in the top 16. Quite a shame, this battle had a lot of potential. The duel between Leonid Schneider and Pyotr Bordin was slightly similar to the Popov-Kozlov heat. Bordin not only allowed 4 wheels off in the no-go while following, what's even worse is that he straightened out. Then while he was leading, 3 of his wheels went off during the initiation, and he lost a ton of speed. Schneider didn't do any of that, though he did almost straighten out in the chase. And transitioned to the next stage of the competition. Artyom Leitis entered the competition in his backup 350Z, which didn't do anything for him sadly. Long before the acceleration area, Artyom's Nissan slammed into Yevgeny Losyev's Supra and straightened out. Losyev stabilized his car even though 3 of his wheels went off course and made it to the line. No incidents during round 2, Leitis was average in the lead, Losyev was okay following him and earned the win. The only proper battle of the day without zeros, cars colliding or spinning out was the one between Timofey Dobrovolsky and Grigory Gusiev, even though it was clear who had won. Gusiev earned more line points as the leader, 25 against 22, and while following even though he wasn't super consistent, but at least he didn't hit the no-go with all 4. And he was close. That's not a 0 for Dobrovolsky, but this is an obvious win for Griha. Now we get to the right side of the grid and day 2 of the competition, with the fog having limited visibility so badly that you could barely see anything. Not to mention that it would have started to get dark very soon because of all of the delays. As such, the rest of the tandem drifting was postponed until Sunday, and barely anything changed. Once again there was rain, but at least there was no fog. But cars continued to collide and spin out. 4 battles in a row with pretty much identical outcomes. Danila Vorobyov versus Artyom Shabanov. Vorobyov goes for a terrific lead run, Shabanov does just as well following. Round 2 they collide while initiating before the acceleration zone. Shabanov wins. Anton Kozlov and Anton Kliemko, same story. Anatoly Kizin and Ivan Pelman, a carbon copy of the last 2 battles. Maxim Grossman and Dmitry Sherbina, a mirror image, in that Sherbina got a 0 for round 1 and not round 2. He didn't do a great job leading either. The first proper battle of the day, Georgy Chivchyan and Alexander Abramov. Georgy did a fantastic job leading, Alexander in the meantime was correcting, but sticking very close. Chivchyan needed to put in some effort while chasing, which he did, while Abramov made a mistake while initiating, with 3 wheels going off course and serious loss of pace. Georgy is able to work around that, though he nearly straightened out in the end, but both drivers made it to the finish line, with Georgy victorious. The next pair, and once again things play out much like they have before. Another great first round. But during round 2, Ilya Fyodorov, just like in many of the previous battles, collides with Grigory Burlutsky while initiating before the acceleration zone, with the same results as during prior battles. The next battle was going well enough initially. Ilya Popov got a fantastic lead run in, with Kirill Mickiewicz doing a great job following, right up until he straightened out, in so doing nullifying his chase run. Both drivers did fairly well during round 2, but of the two, Popov obviously makes it to the top 16. The second proper battle of this day, and the third one of the entire top 32 stage, and it was between Andrei Ostapov and Dmitry Yermokin. In the lead, Ostapov missed the first 2 clips, earning 22 points for line, and his angle and speed weren't on point, with him losing 12 points for style and 8.5 for angle. Yermokin was able to work around all of this and stay close, even though he corrected. For round 2, Yermokin lost 5 line points for 2 wheels going off course, and he was also struggling to maintain pace, even if not to the same degree. Ostapov was also relatively close. It wasn't clear whether this goes to Yermokin or an OMT, but the judges gave it some thought, and in a split decision sent Yermokin to the next competition stage. The track was drying out, and from this point there were slightly fewer zeros. Or rather, for some rounds there weren't any. But first, Denis Sorokopud tapped Arkady Tsarogratsev while initiating, but Arkady kept it together, as did Denis, but then eventually at touch-and-go 6 he did spin out. Tsarogratsev made it to the finish line, he was careful while following, and won this heat. Damir Idiatulin and Alexei Kozlov put on a great battle, not counting the acceleration portion of round 1, but Damir did a better job in both positions and earned the win. Danilo Skarbogatov, Leonid Schneider, and another 0 because of a tap and Leonid spinning out. Yes, Skarbogatov did correct at touch-and-go 8, taking an inner dive. This was a mistake, but far from a critical one. And he was on throttle in time. Schneider, meanwhile, was playing catch-up on the inside, and he simply didn't leave himself enough room for mitigation. In round 2, neither got a 0, both made it to the line, an obvious win for Skarbogatov. Yevgeny Losiev, Grigory Gusiev, and here we go again. Both were doing very well in round 1, though at touch-and-go 7, Grika's super experienced some understeer, with Gusiev almost getting a 0. Keyword almost. Losiev in the meantime allowed a wheel to go off course. Round 2, things were close to going south during the initiation. Losiev fell behind, slightly attempted to catch up, and at touch-and-go 5, the Gen 4 slammed into the Gen 5. Yevgeny was definitely at fault, and so the win goes to Gusiev. The following battle was as proper as it was utterly perplexing. Anton Kliemko messed up in the first sector and missed the first 2 clips, but from there his lead run wasn't half bad. Artyom Shabanov meanwhile was in step, but either he was lacking pace or he was playing it way too safe, but in any case, he was not following closely by any means. It would seem like a foregone conclusion, but hold on. Anton, while following, was very erratic and twitchy, but phenomenally close. While Shabanov was struggling to maintain pace, also his angle was not in line with the assignment in the first curve. This could have gone to an OMT, but just one of the judges thought that it should. As usual, we had a back and forth. Here's the way I see it. For lead runs, there's a 9-point difference between them. Artyom Shabanov has a 9-point advantage over his opponent, minus the speed component, because given the conditions, we just can't keep track of it. Also, Kliemko was a bit too narrow in the first curve. However, while following, Anton Kliemko did a fantastic job. In Sector 3, Shabanov was a bit too far behind, though all of his transitions were well synchronized. That said, there was a big gap between the two cars, and so all things considered, the lead runs and all of that, I think he made up for those 9 points and earned that OMT. But he only leveled the playing field, considering he was a bit sloppy in the lead. Still, mad props to Anton. The conditions right now are very challenging, but these are the sort of conditions that put the driver's skills to the test. Skill is something that we want to see and that we enjoy observing. We like to see tight and aggressive driving. And in this case, chase performance was the deciding factor. In my opinion, yes, Anton Kliemko did make a mistake in the first curve, which he was penalized for. Misha went into how complicated the scoring process is, but with how closely Kliemko was following, plus all of his transitions, factor in all of that, and he's the winner in my opinion. He only had a slight edge, but an edge nonetheless. Thank you. Next we have Maxim Grossman and Ivan Palman, and a somewhat decent battle on their behalf, thanks to Grossman more than anyone, who first avoided spinning out in the lead after getting hit during the initiation, and then while following was able to work around Palman's strange maneuvers, and in so doing earned the win. The next battle and another driver gets a 0, namely Grigory Burlutsky, who while chasing Georgy Chivchyan fell behind slightly at first, then while trying to catch up at touch-and-go 5 he moved in too close, 2 of Chivchyan's wheels went off course in that same moment, Burlutsky spins out, Gocha makes it to the finish. It's a clear-cut situation. Yes, Chivchyan was penalized for 2 wheels going off, but his mistake was not critical. Also, Grigory was really far behind when the leader went off, also he was trying to catch up and his positioning was wrong. During round 2, Georgy showed how you're supposed to work around such a mistake, avoiding a collision with his opponent in the very same spot, and progressing to the top 8 stage. For the next battle, we saw a record amount of 0s, 4 in total. Both Ilya Popov and Dmitry Yermokin made so many mistakes that there's nothing to even analyze. This is definitely going to an OMT. For the second battle, Ilya got it together. Unlike Dmitry, who first struck his opponent's front wheel with his own front wheel and spun out, and then during round 2, he went totally off course while initiating. If during the top 16 stage there was still some hope that the track might become dry, then by the top 8 all hope had been lost. Conditions were still wet, but the drifting was still pretty solid. Arkady Tsargratsev and Damir Idiatulin had a great battle. Both drivers did a terrific job in either of their respective roles. Tsargratsev seemed to have done a slightly better job, but ultimately this went to an OMT, with the judges actually ruling in completely separate directions. Davidans had Idiatulin winning, Safonov was in favor of Tsargratsev, while Dolgikh ruled for an OMT. And so an OMT it is then. My best battle of the day was with Damir. On top of it being a principal matchup, I also think that during this event, the two of us were the best in terms of lead runs. Our driving was very transparent, we allowed each other to come close. I was the first to lead, and when I saw how closely Damir stuck to me, I was like, I'm gonna have to put in some effort. Later I came up to Team Fresh and they were like, they shared what they thought in the moment, that I wouldn't be able to respond like that. But then they saw me follow him. My angle was more dramatic throughout the entire course. My transitions were aggressive, we were going wheel to wheel. Then they were like, oh, so that was a possibility, huh? An OMT was the right call. That was a battle of equals in true Siberian fashion. Some infighting inside Team Lukoil and yet another 0. Round 1 between Danila Skorobogatov and Grigory Gusiev was very impressive. Danila barely lost any points for speed and line, while Grigory, yes, he was twitchy and correcting, but still following very closely. But in the lead, Gricha, with no assistance from his teammate, spun out while initiating. Gricha's old car progresses, but with Skorobogatov behind the wheel. Anton Kliemko for this event assumed the role of some evil genius who thwarted quite a few drivers looking to win the title, including Artyom Shabanov, Anton Kozlov, and now here he is keeping time up from staying first among teams. With how close and on point he was following Maxim Grossman, Grossman had no choice but to risk it in the chase, and we have yet another collision during the initiation right after the dotted line, and yet another zero for the chaser, a common occurrence during this event. The chaser pushes it and overcooks it with his speed. Kliemko, for the second time in his GP career, is in the top 4. The following battle not ending at the initiation yet again, props to Georgy Chivchyan, who, after getting hit by Ilya Popov, avoids spinning out, even though 3 of his wheels did go off course. Regardless, he made it to the finish line. Credit where it's due, from there Ilya had a decent chase run. For round 2, Popov did well in the lead, Chivchyan was measured and close in the chase, and progressed to the top 4. Such an unbelievable shame what happened during the following battle. When Damir Idiatulin ruined his absolutely phenomenal and simply unbelievable chase run literally in the span of just 1 second. It was actually even less than that. But what matters is he briefly straightened out. Unfortunately, that's another zero. There have been plenty of these sorts of situations throughout the season and even at this very event, which we've covered in detail. Stage 1, Abramov Kliemko top 32. Stage 4, Tivadar Miguel top 32. Schneider Borden at this very event in the top 32. Popov Metskevich top 32, even Gusiev's first attempt during qualifying. Arkady Tsarogratsev took full advantage of the situation, and after a good lead run he also did a good job following, progressing to the top 4 stage. No zeros or stoppages during the first semi-final battle. Instead, Arkady Tsarogratsev significantly outperformed Danila Skorobogatov in both positions. Arkady will contend for the win, Danila for 3rd place. I initiated well, and the run was going well from there. But at a certain point, while on the inner portion of the line there wasn't quite as much rubber as on the outer portion, so I'm preparing to transition and all of a sudden my car sort of gets stuck, resulting in me falling behind. Mr. Tsarogratsev is the fastest of us. At this event anyway, he leaves no room for a mistake, and my mistake cost me passage to the final race. So from there things went south. I was trying my best to stay close, so that I wouldn't feel as bad losing. He didn't do a good job following me. I noticed where there was a big gap between our cars, and I knew where I could beat him, but in one spot I couldn't catch up to him, even though I'd been the fastest the entire day. At around touch-and-goes 5 and 6, his car just rocketed away from me, and I was like, what am I gonna do? I might lose. So then I lunged at him so hard that I nearly hit him. Thankfully I didn't, and I was able to win. But for the second battle, well, Anton Kliemko, who had dispatched so many top-tier drivers prior, was no match for Georgy Chivchyan. What happened was that Anton made the common mistake of hitting his opponent during the initiation and spinning out. For round 2, Georgy calmly sees things through to the end and makes it to the final race. Anton Kliemko now had to contend with Danila Skorobogatov for 3rd place, and Danila won. Lead runs were more or less on par, but while following, Anton once again ruined everything for himself, making his fair share of mistakes between touch-and-goes 4 and 6, when it came to both his positioning and his synchronicity. Skorobogatov avoided making the same mistakes and made it into third place, repeating his peak achievement in his GP career. Anton also repeated his peak achievement by attaining fourth place. In the first curve I wasn't ideal, but from there I think I did a perfect job. That's what a lot of people wrote, so I'm gonna just go with it. A classic Russian drifting showdown between Arkady Tsarogratsev and Georgy Chivchyan, and another 0. Round 1 was beautifully executed by both drivers, truly a battle worthy of the final race. But during the second round, 4 of Goch's wheels went off while he was initiating. He basically gave the win to Arkady. The battle with Arkady, I started in the chase position, and overall, it was a nice tight run, though I did correct in one spot. When I was at the finish, I noticed that Arkady initiated at a fairly low speed compared to my own. It was about 122 kilometers an hour. My idea was that I should initiate like I was during practice, at full tilt. Though in this case it was quite treacherous, overcook it slightly and you go off course. So I decided to take it at high speed. I went for it, but the conditions, they changed slightly, and as a result I missed the first curve. Even though during the previous run I nailed it, while going 3 kilometers an hour faster. But yeah, I went off course. I did realize the risk beforehand, but Arkady's driving during this event was so good that a conservative initiation was not an option for me. It was a conscious decision on my part, but things just didn't pan out. My lead run was good, but he failed to respond in kind, because all 4 of his wheels went off course. I knew he was going to get up to high speed and take his time initiating. Here I am behind him, I decelerate, and then I'm like, oh, we're doing well. Let's carry on in that same vein. And then I noticed that we've gone off course. I continued from there at a more conservative pace. Even though I didn't have to, that was a tactical decision made in the moment. Though by the end of the run I was like, why did I even do that? I don't know how many of his wheels went off course. I might lose this, but it turned out that all 4 went off. And thanks to that I was able to win. This event was certainly challenging, bringing with it plenty of surprises for both the contenders and the fans. But in terms of editing the video reviews, this had to have been the easiest one of this entire season. There wasn't even any need for detailed analyses or deep dives into any of the battles. As for the championship standings, Tsarogratsev made some serious progress, but he still has his work cut out for him on September 27th and 28th. If he wants to earn a second title, who's gonna make it into second and third place, it's a toss-up. Because Ilyatulin, Shabanov, Chivchyan, and Kozlov are all very close in terms of championship points, and there is no telling who will become first among teams. It'll all be decided in the final race. Prior to it, the season finale of RDS Open in Kazan was slated for September 6th and 7th. Also, the super final race in Rostov-on-Don is not that far off, due for October 4th and 5th. Make sure to buy yourself tickets at tickets.vdrifte.ru. Make sure to catch the live broadcasts, and watch the latest season of Tire Wars on RDS TV. And that's it for another video review. Let's hear what the prize-winning drivers have to say. Starting on Thursday, the weather in St. Petersburg was lovely. The sun was out, it was warm. And so there was a sliver of hope that for stage 6, the weather would be dry. We had our fingers crossed because so far, during 6 out of 7 events, it was raining. This time there was also fog. It was frosty, good thing it wasn't snowing. We would have whipped the lot out and had a lot of fun ripping around Igora Drive. Thursday, Friday we were out in the dry. We set the car up for a dry track, but on Saturday and Sunday the weather really did a number on us. But that's when it came time to shine for the true professionals among us. We tried to get a feel for the surface, got used to it, read the pavement, so to speak. That's an actual saying, and yeah, we did what we had to. The Siberians conquered the podium. That felt very nice. And finally, I was able to get up onto the podium. I'm happy that we won, that I got into third place, that my team had a hand in that, and that we were able to become second among teams. So yeah, this was a fantastic event. It felt incredible. We are finally in the running, and hopefully the last races of this season go in the same direction. I'm happy to see the new panel of judges. For every event, there's something new. In terms of the assignment, I mean. For this event, they were essentially using a stopwatch to time us between one transition and the next one. And that was... Well, some of the drivers have obviously yet to get used to it. Because there were complaints, and a lot of drivers lost a lot of points during qualifying. Because they weren't able to maintain the required pace for style points. We somehow figured it out, and got some high scores. We performed quite well, and were able to take advantage of these changes. This event left a fairly positive impression. The weather, of course, was a factor. Yesterday we had thick fog, which I have never seen in drifting. Today we just had some rain, but it was much better without the fog. In general, we've gotten used to driving on wet pavement. We have been this entire season. All of the adjustments we were making throughout the season, we implemented them, and the car's performance was more or less consistent. Now, I did get upset on account of the top 32 because some of my teammates, well, all of them except for me, they lost in their battles. I was the only one who made it to the top 16, and I knew I had to put in some real effort because our goal is to rack up points for the team. It's going to be hard for me to catch up to the leader for the driver's title, but we very much still have the chance to become first among teams. That was constantly on my mind when I was out there battling, and so I gave it all I got, and had some good results. Overall, this race went pretty well for me. For the first time this year, I was able to both become best in qualifying and win the competition. Our team had already gotten first place, right here at Igora Drive actually, when we were doing the inverse layout. I came in second, but a teammate won the race. Coming in first myself would have been difficult, but I was well on my way. My car was incredibly fast, and I was able to carry that pace throughout the entire event. Do well in the lead, which is important in our racing series. And since my pace was so good, I was easily able to follow and keep up with everybody. What stuck with me is that a lot of the runs that on the broadcast they looked fantastic and worthy of a score of like 99, in reality they were sub-80 point runs because they were so slow. This shocked a lot of my colleagues because they thought they did really well, but the thing is that these new rules, they encourage drivers to go fast and to learn how to maintain as quick a pace as possible. I think it's awesome, but the fact that mid-season, or rather closer to the end of the season, the news coming out now might have been unpleasant for some, but if you focus on speed, you'll find that it is great. This has definitely been an eventful year. As for how long I was sitting on the sidelines, I think it was in 2019 when we began to work with Cabergan. It is an amazing feeling to finally be driving instead of freezing outside. I do not envy our coaches and spotters who've been with us throughout this season, because to spend 6 events under the rain and in the cold, and with the winds, it must have sucked. I remember how I used to bundle up, sitting on the grandstands like a head of cabbage, waiting for your guy to finally come through, to win and make you feel nice and warm. All of a sudden you're feeling nice and calm. But driving the car is much better than sitting on the radio. That said, you have a high level of responsibility. That job also requires skill and effort. And I think that all the years I spent on the grandstands, they gave me a deeper understanding of everybody else's driving style. After spending years observing them, I know who's going to do what and where, which makes things that extra bit easier for me. As always, I want to post some good results. I know that we absolutely have a fighting chance to become first among teams. After this race, we are still in first place, which is nice, of course, but we'd better make sure to stay there. And that's going to require a good performance both from me and my teammates. I would have liked to say that I'll get some rest before the season finale, but as always, September is a hectic month. There's going to be a bunch of races outside of RDS GP, and hopefully I can power through all of it, make it to the track in good spirits, and drift on dry pavement finally. Hopefully we see a golden autumn situation in Moscow, without rain. Hopefully I don't freeze or get wet, or explode or burn up, or anything like that. Yeah, hopefully none of that happens to us. Instead, we want warm and sunny weather and plenty of smoke. Win the driver and the team trophy in epic fashion, and become best in qualifying. And ride into the sunset. Overall, we're doing well. We're making heaps of progress. We need to quickly adapt to the new rules and take advantage of them. But yeah, everything is good. Hopefully we become even better going forward, and what else is there to say? I love RDS, I am so grateful.